She was never meant to be the face of Tulsa's deadliest street war, just a girl from the South Side raised on food stamps and silence. But Lekysha Davis, she had a fire in her that set her apart. When the Hoovers kicked her brother out and labeled him a snitch, everything flipped. She didn't cry about it, she got even. K4 didn't ask for respect, she took it, and fast. Her name started ringing out in the streets like a threat. People said she moved tougher than half the guys out there. Then came the broad daylight shooting, the one that turned her from a street name into breaking news. A man gunned down in a parking lot. No hesitation, no second thoughts. What happened in those few seconds and everything that followed shook Tulsa's gang scene to its core. But to really understand her story, we've got to break down the Tulsa gang scene first. Now, when people talk about gang-infested cities in the U.S., the usual names pop up: Chicago, L.A., Detroit. But Tulsa, it actually ranks high on the list, and that surprises a lot of people. Back in the 70s and 80s, the gang presence in Oklahoma started making itself known. You could see it in the graffiti tagging up shopping centers and housing projects. Phrases like "Crips are all" and "Bloods rule" started showing up everywhere. That was the early warning sign. Then, on August 27, 1986, the Oklahoman ran an article that shook people up. Rumors were flying that gang organizers from LA had come to Tulsa. Their goal: recruit young, broke, bored teens and mold them into organized crews. Drug dealers, thieves, pimps, real street-level soldiers. At the time, Thomas Brown, a staff member at Higher Dimensions Family Church, wasn't surprised. He said Tulsa was like a baby version of LA, slowly growing into a full-blown gangland city. And honestly, you could see it coming. Gangs thrive in cities with heavy poverty and little opportunity, and Tulsa had both, especially on the north side. Comanche Park, one of the most feared housing projects in Tulsa, was known for police raids and constant patrols. And it wasn't alone. Morning Star, Apache Manor, Town Square, Mohawk Manor, Seminole and Whitlow, Osage Hills, each one had its own rep. Most of these housing projects were built in the 60s and 70s to help low-income families. But the reality, they quickly became hotspots for gang activity, violence, and just straight-up neglect. Back in the day, Tulsa's streets were mostly split between two names, Crips and Bloods. But that's not the case anymore. Over time, things evolved, and now there's a whole network of smaller cliques and offshoots. And the way they move has changed, too. It's not fists and fades like it used to be. Now it's all about guns. The latest reports say Tulsa's dealing with over 2,000 active gang members and affiliates, all repping different sets. Each crew got its colors, graffiti tags, hand signs, the whole nine. But here's the thing about Tulsa. It's not like your typical big city gang scene. In places like LA or Chicago, it's all about territory. You've got crews claiming entire blocks or neighborhoods like it's their personal kingdom. But Tulsa? Nah, it's different out here. It's less about where you're from and more about who you're rolling with. You could have rivals living just a few doors down from each other. No lines, no borders, just tension waiting to explode. And these gangs, they're not just chilling in the background. We're talking robberies, burglaries, check scams, drug deals, shootings, the whole nine. They're deep in it. But out of all the crews making noise in Tulsa, none hit harder than the Hoover Crips. Officially known as the Hoover Criminal Gangs, or HCG for short, they've got deep roots that stretch all the way back to the west side of South Central LA. We're talking the 1960s, right around 92nd and Hoover Avenue. That's where it all started. Back then, they weren't even Crips yet. They called themselves the Hoover Groovers. Just a bunch of young dudes from different hoods, same energy, posted up on 92nd, trying to figure life out in a city that was already tough as nails. As the Crip movement started gaining traction over on the west side, especially around St. Andrews Park, the Hoovers jumped in and linked up. It wasn't some formal merger or anything, more like a street-level alliance. Crip culture was spreading fast, and the Hoovers got swept right into it. By around 1973, the Hoover Groovers had fully flipped and started repping as the 92 Hoover Crips. After that, new Hoover sets started popping up everywhere, from 43rd all the way to 112th Street. Each had its own vibe, but they all carried that same Hoover name. Things got sticky in 1979. That's when the major Crip split happened. The Rolling 60s and the 8 trade gangster Crips got into it heavy. It wasn't just a beef, it was a line in the sand. Gangs had to pick a side. If you rolled with the Rolling 60s, you became a neighborhood Crip, also known as a Deuce or 2X. If you rocked with the 8 Trays, you were now a gangster Crip, aka Trey or 3X. The Hoovers, they went with the gangsters, repping that 3X proudly. Then came August 1979. Raymond Lee Washington, one of the original Crip founders, got gunned down in a drive-by. Word on the street was that the Hoovers had something to do with it. Whether true or not, the rumor was enough to light the streets on fire. Gangs still loyal to Raymond started warring with the Hoovers, and from there, it was up. By the mid-'80s, the Hoovers had built a serious rep, one soaked in violence. Their name stayed in people's mouths anytime a body dropped. Even other Crips didn't rock with them like that. The crack era only turned things up more. The Hoovers got deep into the substance game, thanks in part to connections like Ricky Freeway Ross, who had close ties with the 52 and 74 Hoover sets. That plug helped push them into the spotlight and the heat that came with it. By the 1990s, the Hoovers were tired of the Crip politics. They were beefing with just about every Crip gang in LA, East Coast Crips, Main Streets, the Rolling 60s, the Rolling Hundreds, all of them. So they made a move that shook the streets. They dropped the Crip and started calling themselves Hoover Criminals. It was a rebrand that matched the chaos they were in. The 74 Hoovers were the first to make that change, still keeping the same initials but switching up the meaning. Meanwhile, the 52nd Hoovers stayed solid with the Gangsta Crip title. One thing that stayed the same across most Hoover sets was how they carried themselves. Straight A-B-K, E-B-K. That means anybody killer, everybody killer. They weren't just targeting one group. Nah, it was smoke with whoever. Their walls would be hit with tags like BK for Blood Killer, CK for Crip Killer, and OK for Rolling O's Killer. That's how far the beef stretched. Now, when you bring up the Hoover sets in Tulsa, you have to know it's not just one crew making noise. You've got the 107th, 54, 63, 57, and 27 Hoovers all moving strong. But if we're keeping it real, the 107th Hoovers, they're the ones that stand out the most. Not just because they roll deep, but because they're the loudest and most aggressive when it comes to the streets. A lot of young guys looked up to them, and that includes Lekysha Davis. Lekysha Davis grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a city where gang culture runs deep and black kids are often stuck choosing between the streets or trying to walk the straight path. Her story, it's one you'll hear echoed in every corner of North, East, and South Tulsa. Homes without fathers, fridges barely stocked, moms hustling to make ends meet with food stamps, and Section 8. That kind of pressure, it pushes people. And when the streets offer quick cash, some respect, and a place to belong, it's easy to see why so many end up getting pulled in. For a lot of young kids, it wasn't even a choice. They were raised around it, dragged into it, before they could understand what was going on. Gang life dangled all the things they thought they needed: power, loyalty, protection, fast money, but for most it ends the same, locked up or gone too soon. Lekysha became another product of that cycle. She started hanging heavy on the south side, mostly around East 64th Street in Newport. That's where she got close to a dude police say is a known member of the 52 Red Mob Bloods. And not just any member, this guy supposedly kicked off a clique called 64 SND. That crew, known on the streets for one thing, being straight Hoover killers. Their whole mission was to wipe out Hoover sets across the city. So Lekysha found herself right in the middle of some deep street politics. But things got even messier. Her own brother, he used to run with the 57 Garrison Block Hoovers. That's a set under the 107 Hoover Crips. But word on the street is they kicked him out. Why? People say he got hit with the snitch label. And from what people are saying, it all goes back to one incident. It was the early hours of July 31st, 2022. Just after 1 a.m., 17-year-old Tarek Chairs was behind the wheel of a stolen Kia, riding through Tulsa while his family was out of town. He had just left a rap party on the north side and was headed east on the Broken Arrow Expressway, somewhere between Memorial and Sheridan. But what started as just another late-night cruise took a deadly turn. Out of nowhere, a shootout broke out on the highway. Word is, the drama didn't start there. It most likely kicked off somewhere else, but it sure ended on the expressway. Tarek was shot and killed right there on the scene. The passenger next to him caught 6 bullets and ended up in the hospital. Another person in the car actually jumped out and ran off. Tulsa police got their first call around 1 a.m. reporting gunshots near the BA. By the time they pulled up, the scene was wild. The whole highway had to be shut down for hours. Cops found casings from multiple types of guns scattered along the road. It wasn't just a quick exchange. This was a full-blown shootout that stretched all the way from the I-44 interchange down to about 41st Street. As cops tried to figure out who Tarek was, they traced it back to his social media and what they found. Even his mom was shocked. The boy with the gun? To his mother, Tina, that wasn't the Tarek she raised. Yeah, maybe he posted a certain image online, but the real Tarek, he was the type to care for his meemaw, check in on his cousins, and love on his younger brothers. She described him as a quiet teen who had dreams of going to college, not someone driven by violence. Tina believed the whole thing came down to pure pettiness. She said it started with teens mean mugging and flexing on each other, and it ended with somebody following her son and shooting him down. Tulsa Police Lieutenant Demetrios Triantafelis, who led the crime gun unit, explained how most of these teen shootings were rooted in drama that started online. Social media played a big role, people throwing shade, making threats, and posting wild stuff just to boost likes and views. According to him, it was all about trying to look tough for the internet, but when these kids actually ran into each other in real life, that digital beef turned into real violence. He shared some examples from local cases, teens posing with guns, throwing up gang signs, and even placing weapons on a dead gang member's tombstone like some kind of tribute. One picture showed Tarek surrounded by boys like it was a loyalty post. Another had a 12-year-old flashing a handgun, threatening another gang. Triantafelis said it had turned into a dangerous game of who can be the most outrageous, and too often, that game ended in bloodshed. Tina spoke out, frustrated and broken. She said these kids were getting lost in a fantasy. Social media made them believe they had to play a role, but it wasn't real. She knew many of them personally and couldn't believe what she saw online. To her, the violence had become unreal. The police weren't just sitting back though. Triantafelis and his team worked closely with other units, focusing on pulling illegal guns off the streets and targeting repeat shooters. They knew they couldn't stop everything, but their mission was clear: go after the most violent players before the next tragedy happened. But in Tarek's case, there were no arrests, no suspects named, not officially at least. Still, the case stayed open. Police started asking the public for help, dropping flyers, setting up anonymous tip lines, and even offering cash rewards. And once that money hit the table, that's when people really started talking. After a long, steady investigation, police finally made their move. Brandon Jefferson, just 18 years old at the time and believed to be the driver of the other car involved in the highway shootout, was arrested and charged with murder in August. During questioning, he claimed he didn't pull the trigger himself, that it was the people riding with him who did the shooting. Still, the case remained wide open and detectives kept digging. Then in September, another arrest went down, this time all the way out in Houston, Texas. Police tracked down Isaiah Shanks and hit him with charges nearly identical to Jefferson's. Both of them landed in the Tulsa County Jail, facing serious time. Not long after that, cops caught a third suspect, Tavion Herring. He got picked up during a traffic stop in West Tulsa, right there in the parking lot of a fast food spot off Gilcrease Museum Road. He was charged with first-degree murder, shooting with intent to kill, and even using a vehicle to fire a weapon. Detectives said they were still running down leads, trying to confirm if there were any more players in the mix, but they weren't done yet. The fourth suspect, Linus Altanor, was found and arrested in Okmulgee. He too was tied to the murder of Tarek Chairs. All four, Brandon Jefferson, Isaiah Shanks, Tavion Herring, and Linus Altanor, ended up facing first-degree murder charges and shooting with intent to kill. According to investigators, they believe they had everyone responsible for Tarek's death locked up and charged. Word on the street was that K4's brother dropped one of those names to the cops, and that's what led to all four getting locked up. After that, the gang didn't want anything to do with him. K4 and her brother had always been close, like real tight. But once people started calling him a snitch, everything flipped. Some say that's what pushed her to flip sides and join a rival gang. Out of all the Hoover sets she could have rolled with, she chose 64 S&D, a straight-up declaration of war. And despite being a girl, K4 carried herself like she had something to prove, like she wasn't just in the mix, she was the mix. She had that rough energy, the kind you don't fake. The way she walked, talked, dressed, it all screamed like she was one of the homies, not somebody's little sister. People in the streets called her a stud, assumed she was into girls. But then came rumors she had a baby with a dude named Chuck, who supposedly died in a car crash. Nobody could ever really confirm it though. It was just one of those things people passed around like street folklore. But what wasn't folklore? Her reputation. Once she claimed the name K4, it was like a switch flipped. She went from just another face in the set to the most feared blood in Oklahoma. Word was, she always had that blicky on her, and some said she was deep in the robbery game, targeting rival gang members and even random people, especially near the Quick Trip stores scattered around Tulsa. You could always spot her by the baggy clothes, but those weren't just for style, they were strategic. They hid whatever she was carrying. Nobody ever really knew if she was strapped or not, and that kept people on edge. But the truth is, she didn't need a weapon to make her presence felt. People swore up and down she could handle herself barehanded, throwing hands with dudes from rival gangs like she had nothing to lose. And the wildest part, she wasn't just tough, she was cold. That stare she gave, dead eyes, rage mixed with hunger. She didn't look angry, she looked possessed. They talked about her like she wasn't even human, like she was something out of nightmares. The kind of person who wouldn't hesitate, wouldn't blink. Some called her a demon, others labeled her a stick-up kid, saying she was out here hitting licks on the regular. But through all the talk, not a single official charge ever stuck to her name when it came to those robberies. By 17, K4 was fully submerged in a bloody war against the Hoovers. And that's when things got even crazier. She linked up with FNB, another wild crew. Together, they created Southeast Notorious Village. It was something no one saw coming. Bloods and Crips under one roof, all flying the same flag, Hoover Killer. This new alliance was straight ruthless. They didn't care if you were banging the wrong set or just standing in the wrong place. If they thought you disrespected one of theirs, you were a target. One time, they even kidnapped a 57 Hoover, cut off his dreads, and made him take back the disrespect he threw their way. But the real ones knew. 64 S&D was always the loudest in the beef. They stayed pushing the line, always talking heavy in interviews and music videos about how they were hitting the Hoovers. It was non-stop tension, no letting up. Then one day, everything blew up for 4001. It was January 18th, 2024, a regular busy afternoon at a strip mall near 58th and Peoria in Tulsa. Cars pulling in and out, people going about their day, when suddenly things took a turn. Out of nowhere, 5 dudes rolled up and jacked somebody's truck right there in the parking lot. 2 of them hopped in the ride and peeled off, but the other 3, they casually started walking away like nothing had just happened. But then came the twist nobody saw coming. K4, who had witnessed the whole thing go down, didn't call the cops. She walked right up to the 3 guys, pulled out a gun, and started letting off shots. One of the men, Clifford Pizzana, who people around the way knew as Trey, got hit and dropped right there. Davis didn't stop. She kept firing, chasing off the other 2 as they took off running for their lives. Cops got the call around 2 p.m. about shots fired at that strip mall. When they pulled up, they found Pizzana laying on the pavement, riddled with bullets, already gone. And this wasn't the first time that area had seen bloodshed. Just a month before, there was another shootout right in that same spot. And earlier that January, a stabbing happened at an apartment complex just up the road. Pizzana's killing marked the 7th homicide that month in Tulsa, already 2 or 3 above the normal count. At first, police believed there might have been some kind of argument before the shots rang out, but after checking surveillance footage, they were able to quickly identify Lekysha Davis as the shooter. The 2 carjackers who ran off to Savannah Landing Apartments. Once in custody, both of them pointed Davis out in a photo lineup. They told cops the reason she came at them like that was because they were Hoover Crips and she was tied to the Bloods. Police arrested both of them for the carjacking, but here's the wild part. They later said the robbery and the shooting weren't actually connected. Still, the damage was done. Clifford Pizzana's family was heartbroken. His sister Daja spoke out, demanding justice for her brother, who was now gone for good. Once they had a face and a name, Tulsa PD put the word out. Photos of Davis holding the pistol were posted all over social media. Officer Danny Bean told the public to call in any tips, even if they wanted to stay anonymous. And sure enough, on January 31st, a tip came in. Davis was hiding out in an apartment complex not far from the scene. Around 5 p.m., officers moved in and arrested her. She was taken to the Tulsa County Jail and hit with a first-degree murder charge. Her bond? A cool $1 million. Now, Clifford Pizzana's name was all over the headlines, but not always in the way that told the full story. Media outlets had people thinking K4 was some kind of heartless monster, like she just stepped into the chaos looking for blood. But once you start digging, you realize things were way more complicated than they made it seem. Turns out, Clifford, the victim in all this, was allegedly affiliated with the 57th Garrison Block Hoovers. That's the same gang K4's own brother was tied to. Word started spreading that right before everything went down, Trey and some of his crew had been involved in a robbery. Some said it was a planned hit. Others claimed it was just a street fight that got out of hand. Either way, things spiraled fast. K4's people came forward quickly, saying she was just defending herself. And honestly, at first glance, that story held some weight. Oklahoma has some strong self-defense laws, especially when it comes to protecting yourself in public. If K4 really did see a robbery happening, and if Trey or anybody else pointed a gun at her, legally, she might have been within her rights to shoot. Problem is, self-defense only covers you up to a certain point. What really messed things up was what came after that first shot. Reports say K4 kept firing even after Trey was already down and clearly no longer a threat. That's where the line got crossed. Once the danger is over, the law doesn't play around with continued violence. That's how you go from self-defense to being charged with excessive force or worse, second-degree murder. And then she ran. For 13 days, K4 disappeared. No calls to the cops, no turning herself in, nothing. She just vanished. And that right there, that hurt her case more than anything else. Because if you really believed you did the right thing, why disappear? Prosecutors jumped all over that. To them, That was proof she knew she messed up. Proof that what went down wasn't just a self-defense situation gone wrong, but something deeper. By the time March 6, 2025 rolled around, 18-year-old Lekysha Davis stood in court and entered a no contest plea. That's basically her saying she ain't admitting guilt, but she wasn't fighting it either. The court found her guilty of 1 count of amended manslaughter and 2 counts of shooting with intent to kill. Each charge carried a 20-year sentence. Altogether, that's 60 years behind bars. Unless something changes, K4 won't touch freedom again until 2085. By then, she'll be 78 years old. What are your thoughts on this story? Appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.